I never wanted to be in charge of anything larger than a trail maintenance crew. That fact matters now. 30 days later, standing on the observation deck of Harker Peak Ranger Station, with dried blood under my fingernails and a vocabulary I didn't possess a month ago. Words like kill zone and controlled collapse and acceptable losses, they live in my mouth like foreign objects. My name is Maren Caldwell. I was 26 years old when the world ended, a GS-7 park ranger stationed in the Bitterroot Wilderness of western Montana. My job involved counting elk, maintaining fire lookouts, and explaining to hikers that no, they could not pet the bison. I carried bear spray. I had never fired my service weapon at a living thing. The morning of June 14th began with a 12-mile drive up the switchback road to Harker Peak for my weekly equipment check. The station sat at 8,200 feet elevation. A converted fire lookout expanded in the 1990s into a legitimate ranger outpost with a concrete foundation, a communications room, bunkhouse quarters for 6, and a wraparound observation deck that offered 360-degree visibility across the surrounding valleys. It was, by design, defensible. Not because anyone anticipated what came, but because the Forest Service built things to survive lightning, wind, and wildfire. I noticed the smoke first. 3 distinct columns rising from the direction of Hamilton, our nearest town, 30 miles east down the mountain. Wildfire was my first thought. My radio crackled with nothing, not silence, but a dead carrier tone that meant the repeater tower on Sentinel Ridge had gone offline. Then I saw the vehicles on the switchback below. 2 trucks and a sedan were climbing the mountain road at dangerous speed, taking the hairpin turns with the desperation of people being chased rather than people in a hurry. I lifted my binoculars. The lead truck, a white Forest Service vehicle I recognized as belonging to Station Chief Darren Oakes, had a shattered rear window. Something dark smeared across the tailgate. They arrived in a spray of gravel 11 minutes later. Darren fell out of the driver's seat with his left arm wrapped in a bloody flannel shirt, his face the color of candle wax. Behind him came Thomas Vega, our seasonal wildlife tech, pulling a woman I didn't recognize from the passenger side. The sedan disgorged a family of 4, a man, a woman, 2 teenage boys, all of them shaking. "Maren," Darren said. His voice was wrong, thin, and wet. "Lock the gate." "What happened to your arm?" "Lock the gate and I'll tell you everything. Do it now." I ran. The station's vehicle gate was a heavy steel barrier designed to prevent unauthorized access during fire season. I'd opened it that morning with my key. Now I dragged it shut and threw the bolt with hands that had begun to tremble because of the look in Darren's eyes. Not fear, exactly, but the absence of something that had always been there. His certainty. His calm. When I returned, Tomas had Darren seated on the deck steps. The family stood clustered near their sedan, the father's arm around his wife, the 2 boys pressed close. The woman from Darren's truck sat on the ground with her knees drawn up, rocking slightly. "There's an outbreak," Darren said. "I don't know what it is. We got the alert from Region 1 dispatch at 0500. Some kind of rapid onset neurological infection. Biting transmission. Hamilton is gone, Maren. I watched people eating each other in the parking lot of the Safeway." I remember the specific silence that followed, the wind through the pines, a Stellar's jay calling somewhere below us. "How bad is your arm?" I asked, because the question I actually wanted to ask was too large to fit through my teeth. "Laceration from the window glass, not a bite." He met my eyes. "Not a bite. I need you to believe that." I looked at Tomas. He nodded once. "Okay," I said. "Okay, everyone inside." That was the last ordinary decision I ever made. The station's communications room became our war room within the hour, though we had no war to fight, yet only confusion thickening into dread. Darren sat in the corner chair while Tomas cleaned and wrapped his arm properly, revealing a 6-inch gash from elbow to wrist. Glass. I believed him. I had to believe him because the alternative meant deciding something I wasn't ready to decide. The family introduced themselves in fragments. Paul and Diane Whitaker, their sons Connor and Bryce, ages 16 and 14. They'd been driving to a camping reservation at Lake Como when the road ahead filled with abandoned vehicles and people moving wrong. Paul's word, wrong. Not running, not walking, something between. They'd turned around, seen Darren's truck flying past, and followed it up the mountain out of pure animal instinct. The woman from Darren's truck was Elena Marsh, a veterinary technician from Hamilton who'd been in the Forest Service office dropping off lab samples when everything went sideways. She hadn't spoken yet beyond confirming her name. I tried every radio frequency. The main repeater was dead. The backup frequency on Granite Peak returned only static. I reached one voice, a panicked ham operator near Missoula, who told me the interstate was gridlocked. The National Guard had been called, and people were dying in numbers no one could count. Then his signal cut to nothing mid-sentence. "What do we have here?" I asked Tomas, because inventory was something I could control. He was already thinking the same way. 6 bunks, emergency rations for a crew of 6 for 2 weeks, so about 10 days for 9 people if we're careful. Water from the cistern, fed by snowmelt. Generator with maybe 40 gallons of diesel, medical kit, 2 chainsaws, hand tools. Weapons? Your sidearm, Darren's sidearm, the flare gun, fire axes. 9 people, 2 pistols, a mountain. Darren pulled himself upright, color returning slightly to his face. "Marin, I need to tell you something while I can still think clearly." Everyone went still. "I'm not bitten," he said, "but I lost a lot of blood and I'm 53 years old and I can feel my pulse doing something it shouldn't be doing. I need you to assume command of this station." "Darren, that's not a request. You know this mountain better than anyone alive. You know every trail, every sightline, every water source within 10 miles. You're station lead until I'm back on my feet." He paused. "Or until I'm not." The weight of it settled on my shoulders like a physical thing. 9 people looking at me. I was the youngest adult in the room. "Okay," I said. "First priority is security assessment. Tomas, I need you on the deck with binoculars. Watch the road. Watch the tree line. Anything moves, you tell me. Paul, take your boys and check every window latch and door seal in this building. Diane, Elena, I need a complete inventory of food, water, medical supplies, batteries, tools, everything gets listed." People moved. That was the revelation that people would move if you spoke with direction. Not because I had authority or wisdom or experience, because I was willing to decide. I stepped onto the observation deck alone and looked down at the world I'd spent 3 years protecting. The smoke columns over Hamilton had multiplied. I counted 7 now. In the valley below, I could see the switchback road, our only vehicle access, winding down through dense forest before emerging into the flatland. Anything coming up would be visible for the final 2 miles. But the forest itself was the problem. Dense lodgepole pine on 3 sides, with only the north face offering the kind of open alpine scree that would give us clear sightlines. We were high, we were remote, we had walls, but we were also trapped on a peak with one road, finite supplies, and no guarantee that what was happening below would stay below. The jay called again. I envied it the wings. By nightfall, we knew what we were working with. Diane and Elena had cataloged every can, every packet, every bottle. The math was simple and cruel. At minimum rationing, we had food for 11 days. Water was less urgent. The cistern held 2,000 gallons, and the June snowpack above us still fed the collection pipes, but everything else operated on a countdown. Darren slept in the bunk room, his breathing shallow but steady. I checked on him every hour. His wound showed no signs of infection, no discoloration, no fever, no behavioral change. Just blood loss and exhaustion, and the look of a man who'd seen his world inverted. Tomas found me on the deck at 9 p.m., the last light draining from the western sky. The valleys below were dark. No town lights, no headlights on the distant highway, just the amber glow of fires. "I counted movement on the road," he said quietly. "About 4 miles down. Figures, maybe a dozen, coming up slow." My stomach dropped. Speed? Walking pace, unsteady. Could be survivors. Could be not. We watched together through binoculars as the shapes moved in the growing dark. They weren't using flashlights. They weren't calling out. They moved with a shuffling persistence that made my skin contract. One of them walked directly into the guardrail, bounced off, and continued forward without reaction. "That's not survivors," I said. "No. How long until they reach the gate at that pace?" Tomas did the math. 6 hours, maybe 7. The grade gets steeper near the top. Will the gate hold? It's rated for vehicle impact, but it's 4 feet high. If they can climb... I hadn't thought about that. Could they climb? Nobody had told us the rules of whatever this was. The ham operator had said biting transmission and rapid onset. Darren had said people eating each other. None of that told me whether these things could navigate a steel gate or a flight of stairs or a locked door. "We assume they can," I said. "We prepare for the worst case." That night, I made my first real command decision. I sent Connor and Bryce, the Whitaker boys, to haul every piece of loose furniture, every spare timber, every heavy object they could find to the station's ground floor entry points. We had 2 doors. The main entrance facing east and a utility door on the south side. Both were steel core with deadbolts. Both had 3 concrete steps leading up to them. I had the boys stack filing cabinets behind each door and lag bolt 2x4s across the frames using hardware from the maintenance shed. Paul Whitaker worked alongside his sons without complaint, though his hands shook the entire time. Diane stood watch with Tomas. Elena sorted the medical supplies into 3 categories: critical, useful, luxury, with the quiet efficiency of someone accustomed to triage. At midnight, I gathered everyone in the common room. Darren was awake but stayed in his bunk, listening. "Here's what I know," I said. "There are infected people on the road below us. They're moving up. I don't know if they're following us specifically or just moving. Our position is strong, we're high, we have walls, we have limited access points, but we are 9 people with 2 guns and enough food for 11 days. "So what do we do after 11 days? Paul asked. "We don't wait 11 days. Starting tomorrow, we expand our resources. There's a backcountry supply cache at Miller's Saddle, 3 miles north, trail shelters with emergency provisions, a fire lookout on Granite Peak with solar panels and radio equipment that might still work. This mountain has more to offer than this building." "And the things on the road?" "We watch them, we learn what they can do, and we make sure this station is the last place on Earth they can reach." I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the deck with my service pistol in my lap, watching the dark tree line below and listening to the mountain breathe. Dawn on day 2 revealed them clearly. 14 figures spread across the last visible stretch of Switchback Road, roughly 2 miles below our position. Through binoculars, I could see what Darren had described people who were no longer people. Their movements were arrhythmic, purposeless at the individual level, but collectively drifting upward. One wore a Hamilton High School hoodie. Another was barefoot, leaving dark prints on the asphalt. They hadn't reached the gate yet. The final mile of road was the steepest, and their progress had slowed overnight. But they hadn't stopped. Whatever drove them didn't sleep. "They're following the road," Tomas observed from beside me, "not cutting through forest, staying on the path of least resistance." "Good. That's information. For now." I dispatched the morning's assignments while Darren ate broth in the bunk room and insisted he was improving. Tomas and I would hike to Miller's Saddle for the supply cache. Paul would maintain watch with the second pair of binoculars. Connor and Bryce would continue fortifying the lower windows with plywood from the maintenance shed. Diane would manage rationing. Elena would monitor Darren. The hike to Miller's Saddle took us along the northern ridge trail open terrain above the tree line, with visibility in every direction. The June sun was bright and the air tasted clean, absurdly normal. Mountain bluebirds darted between rocks. Marmots watched us from their burrows. "It doesn't feel real up here," Tomas said. "I know. Down there people are dying. Up here it's Tuesday." The cache at Miller's Saddle was a steel locker bolted to a concrete pad, standard Forest Service backcountry supply point. Inside, 12 freeze-dried meal kits, a water purification system, emergency blankets, a hand crank radio, 50 feet of climbing rope, a hatchet, and a first aid kit. Not a fortune, but 12 more days of food for 2, or 4 days for 9. Every calorie mattered now. We loaded our packs, and I tried the hand crank radio. Static on every frequency until I hit the emergency band, where a recorded loop played FEMA's voice, mechanical and calm, advising citizens to shelter in place, avoid contact with symptomatic individuals, and await military evacuation. Await military evacuation, Tomas repeated. From where? Everywhere, apparently. That message could be a week old. It could be automated. Probably is. We hiked back in silence. The return trail offered a vantage point where I could see the switchback road in its entirety. The 14 figures had become 23. 9 more had emerged from the forest at the road's lower junction, joining the slow uphill migration. I stopped walking. Tomas followed my gaze. They're accumulating, I said. Drawn to movement, sound? Or just following the ones ahead of them, herd behavior? How many can the gate hold? The gate's not the question. The question is what they do when they reach the gate and find they can't pass. Do they stop, go around, find the forest trails? Tomas was quiet for a long time. Then, we should think about the trails. He was right. The station sat at the convergence of 4 maintained trails. The road, the North Ridge Trail to Miller's Saddle, the west descent to Clearwater Creek, and the south connector to Granite Peak. The road was gated. The trails were not. They were narrow, steep, rocky, difficult terrain for a coordinated person, potentially impassable for something that walked into guardrails without flinching. But I couldn't assume that. Tomorrow, I said, we start building obstacles on the trails, deadfall barriers, tripwires with noise alerts, anything that slows them or warns us. Back at the station, I marked our position on the topographic map pinned to the communications room wall and drew a red circle around it, 1 mile radius. Everything inside that circle was ours to defend. Everything outside was the world trying to reach us. 23 on the road, climbing, day 2, and the siege had already begun. Day 3 brought our first real test. At dawn, the leading edge of the group reached our vehicle gate. I watched from the deck as 7 figures pressed against the steel bars, not pounding, not climbing, just leaning into the obstruction with their full body weight, a continuous mindless pressure. The gate groaned but held. Behind them, more accumulated, compressing the front ranks against the metal. They can't figure it out, Connor said from beside me. The 16-year-old had appointed himself my shadow on morning watch, binoculars hanging from his neck like a talisman. They're not trying to go around or over, just pushing. For now. You keep saying that, because it keeps being true. I pulled him back from the railing. Here's what you need to understand. We can't count on them staying stupid. Maybe they learn, maybe they don't. But we prepare as if they will. That morning, Tomas and I took Paul and the boys into the surrounding forest to build our first trail barriers. We felled lodgepole pines across the 3 unblocked trail approaches, stacking them in interlocking patterns 3 feet high. Not impassable for a determined human, but hopefully enough to channel or delay anything without problem-solving capacity. At each barrier, we hung tin cans filled with gravel on fishing line, primitive but effective noise alerts. The physical work felt good, purposeful. The boys threw themselves into it with the barely contained energy of teenagers given permission to destroy things. Paul worked steadily, and I noticed his hands had stopped shaking. Labor was medicine for the mind. By afternoon, we had 3 barriers in place, and I was drenched in sweat, muscles burning in ways that reminded me that this body had been built for desk reports and moderate hikes, not construction. Tomas moved differently. He'd grown up on a ranch in eastern Oregon, and his relationship with physical tools was fluent in a way mine would never be. We returned to find Elena on the deck, watching the gate with a clinical expression. 12 at the gate now, she said. The pressure's bending the lower rail. I looked through binoculars. She was right. The bottom horizontal bar of the gate showed a visible bow. Not critical yet, but the physics were undeniable enough. Bodies pressing continuously against any structure would eventually deform it. "How long?" I asked Tomas. He studied the bend. "At this rate, 4-5 days before failure." "Can we reinforce it?" "Not without going down there." The gate was 300 yards below the station, at the point where the road entered our immediate perimeter. 300 yards of open switchback. We'd be exposed in proximity to the infected, working with tools that made noise. The risk calculation was immediate and obvious. "We don't reinforce the gate," I said. "We let it be our early warning. When it fails, they enter the final approach. We build our real defense here at the station." That evening I drafted the plan on the back of a trail map. The station sat on a leveled pad carved from the mountainside. The south and west sides dropped away steeply, nearly cliff grade. The east side faced the road approach, with the 3 concrete steps up to the main entrance. The north side connected to the ridge trail via a gentle slope. East and north were our vulnerable faces. South and west, gravity defended us. "We need a trench on the north side," I said to the group gathered in the common room, "and something on the east approach, something that stops them before they reach the walls." "A trench," Paul said flatly. "We're digging a trench." "We're digging a trench." Elena spoke for the first time in a full day. "I'll dig." Everyone looked at her. She met no one's eyes, just stared at the map. "I need to do something with my hands," she said, "or I'm going to lose my mind." Darren, sitting upright now with his arm in a proper sling, nodded from his corner. "She's right. Work saves us twice, once from them, once from ourselves." We started digging at first light on day 4. The trench was ugly, shallow, and it took 3 days to complete. A 4-foot wide, 3-foot deep ditch carved from rocky mountain soil across the entire north face of our perimeter, roughly 50 feet from the station's wall. We hit roots and stone constantly. Blisters opened, bled, and hardened into calluses. Bryce, the 14-year-old, developed a technique of prying rocks loose with a steel bar while his brother shoveled behind him. They became a machine. We filled the trench's bottom with sharpened stakes, split lodge poles whittled to points. Not pretty, not professional. But anything falling in wouldn't be walking out easily. On the east side, facing the road approach, we built differently. The 3 concrete steps to the main entrance became our focus. I had Tomas construct a removable ramp, heavy plywood, over the steps that we could pull up like a drawbridge, leaving a 3-foot vertical gap between ground level and our door. Small for a human, potentially decisive for something that couldn't coordinate climbing. During those construction days, I watched the gate. The crowd against it grew 31 by day 5, 46 by day 6. The lower rail bent further. Some of them had begun to spread laterally, pressing against the rock cuts flanking the road. None had found the forest trails yet. Our barriers stood untouched, our tin can alarms silent. But on day 6, something changed. I was on afternoon watch when I noticed a figure separate from the main cluster at the gate. It didn't continue pressing forward. Instead, it turned and moved along the roadside embankment, testing the slope with halting steps. It fell twice, slid back to the road. On its 3rd attempt, it found a gentler grade and made it into the tree line. My throat went dry. "Tomas," I called. He was beside me in seconds. Southeast tree line. One just left the road. He tracked it through binoculars. The figure moved through the forest erratically, bumping off trees, stumbling over roots, but it moved. It was no longer confined to the path. "Could be random," he said. "Could be. Or could be the first one smart enough to go around." I activated our watch rotation that night, 2 people awake at all times, covering the north and east approaches. Sleep became a resource we allocated like food. 4 hours per person, 6 for the boys, because they were still growing and because I could give them that much at least. Darren was on his feet by day 7, arms still bound but functional. He couldn't dig or chop, but he could watch, and his eyes were experienced. He'd spent 30 years in these mountains. He read terrain the way others read text. "You're doing well," he told me on the evening of day 7. finding me alone on the south deck watching the sunset paint the valley gold and black. I'm terrified every minute. That's what doing well looks like. The scared ones stay sharp. I don't know what comes next, Darren. The gate fails in 2 days. They're starting to go around. Our food math gives us maybe 3 more weeks if we find more caches. And then what? He was quiet for a while. Then you'll decide then. That's leadership, Marin. You don't solve day 30 on day 7, you solve day 8. What's day 8? Day 8 is when you send someone to Granite Peak. That lookout has a radio with independent solar power. If anyone's organizing out there, military, government, anyone, that radio can reach them. That's 8 miles through forest, with those things in the trees now. I know. I'd have to send Tomas. He's the only one fast enough and experienced enough. I know that too. I looked out at the darkening valleys. Somewhere down there, Hamilton was still burning. Somewhere down there, the world was ending in slow, shuffling steps, climbing toward us 1 foot at a time. Day 8, I said. Darren touched my shoulder with his good hand and went inside. Thomas left for Granite Peak at dawn on day 8. He carried his pack with 2 days of food, a water filter, the flare gun, and a handheld radio with limited range. Our plan was simple. He'd follow the South Connector Trail along the ridgeline, staying above the tree line where visibility was clear, 8 miles out, 8 miles back. If conditions allowed, he could make it in 2 days. If the radio at Granite worked, he'd hail anyone listening and relay our position. I watched him go until the trail curved out of sight, his pace steady and confident, the morning light catching the aluminum frame of his pack. Then I turned back to face the station, and the 19 people days of food remaining inside it. On day 8, the gate failed. Not catastrophically, no explosion of metal or rushing Horde. The lower rail simply gave way at its welded joint, opening a gap at the base wide enough for a body to push through. I was on the deck when it happened, watched the first figure squeeze under the remaining structure and emerge on the upper road, still moving at that relentless walking pace, then the second, then the third. "They're through," I called, and the station mobilized around me. We'd prepared for this. Everyone knew their positions. Darren and Paul on the east deck with binoculars, tracking their approach up the final stretch of road. Connor and Bryce at the windows with the plywood shutters ready to seal. Diane in the common room managing supplies. Elena and I at the main entrance, ready to pull the ramp. The infected took an hour to cover the 300 yards from the gate to our cleared perimeter. I counted them as they emerged from the last curve of Road 41 in the first wave, with more visible behind. They moved in a loose column defined by the road's width, their feet scraping asphalt in an arrhythmic chorus I could hear from the deck. When the first one reached our leveled pad, it walked directly toward the east wall. Not toward the door, not toward us, just toward the largest visible structure. It reached the concrete foundation and pressed against it, the same mindless pressure behavior from the gate. Others followed, spreading along the east face, hands flat against the wall, pushing at nothing. "They don't see the door," Elena said beside me. "They don't see anything. They just push toward what's solid. What if one finds the steps?" As if answering her question, a figure on the far right of the cluster walked along the building's edge and encountered the 3 concrete steps. It lifted 1 foot, placed it on the first step, and collapsed forward. Its body sprawled across the stairs, twitching. It didn't rise or try again, simply lay there, limbs moving without coordination. 3 steps, I breathed. 3 steps, and they can't navigate them. "Don't celebrate yet," Darren called from above. "North side." I ran through the building and out onto the north deck. Below, at the edge of our cleared zone, 3 figures had emerged from the tree line. They'd come through the forest not on the trail, but through raw undergrowth. They were torn, clothing shredded by branches, skin hanging in strips. But they were here. They walked toward the trench. The first one stepped directly off the edge and fell 3 feet onto the sharpened stakes below. The impact was awful, a sound like wet wood splitting. It didn't scream. It thrashed on the stakes, impaled through the torso, still reaching upward with both arms. The second walked to the edge, paused for what I interpreted as 1 full second of something like assessment, and then stepped in as well. The third walked along the trench edge for 10 feet before also falling in. "The trench works," I said to no one. 3 in the trench, 40 plus against the east wall, more coming through the gate below. Day 8, and we were surrounded. But we were holding. I just needed Tomas to reach that radio. By day 10, the pattern had established itself. They accumulated against our walls and in our trench. The east face held 60-plus bodies pressing against concrete that was built to survive wildfire. Their pressure meant nothing to a foundation that thick. The north trench caught an average of 4 per day, the stakes reducing them to pinned, writhing things that couldn't escape or exert meaningful force. The south and west remained clear. The steep drop-offs defeated anything without climbing ability. Our world shrank to 2 active defensive faces and the constant grinding sound of bodies against stone. I slept 3 hours per night. On day 10, the radio crackled, Tomas's voice, thin and broken by distance but unmistakable. Marin, do you copy?" I lunged for the handset. "Copy, go ahead." "I'm at Granite, radio works, solar panels intact. I've been broadcasting on emergency frequencies for 6 hours. Any response? Static. Then, 1, a military channel, automated, says extraction points are being established at major airfields. Nearest to us is Malmstrom Air Force Base. That's 200 miles east. My chest tightened. 200 miles. I know, but the broadcast is recent timestamp updates daily. Someone is still operating, Marin. The government isn't gone. Can you relay our position? Our coordinates? Already done, broadcasting on loop. Harker Peak Ranger Station, 9 survivors requesting extraction. Good, that's good, Tomas. Can you make it back? Silence. Longer this time. The trail has company. I can see 4 of them on the connector between here and you. They're spread out, but they're on the trail itself. Can you go around? Above the tree line, yeah. It adds 6 hours, but keeps me in the open. I'll start at first light. Be safe. Copy. Tomas out. I sat in the communications room holding the handset for a long time after the signal died. Someone was out there. Infrastructure existed. We weren't the last people making decisions, but 200 miles might as well have been 2,000. We had no vehicle capable of making that journey through what the lowlands had become. Our position was defensible but static. We could survive here, but we couldn't be reached here, not unless someone came for us. The question was whether anyone would. I shared the news with the group that evening. The reaction was a spectrum. Paul wanted to immediately discuss vehicle options. Diane cried with relief that the world hadn't entirely ended. The boys asked if the military would send helicopters. Darren watched me with knowing eyes, understanding what I hadn't said aloud, that a broadcast and a response were different things, that our signal was one of probably thousands, that triage applied to rescue the same way it applied to medicine. Elena asked the only useful question. What do we do while we wait? We expand. We survive. We make this place sustainable for as long as it takes, which could be forever. That night, I stood on the deck and listened to the sound of bodies against our walls, that endless patient pressure, and made a decision I hadn't shared yet. If no extraction came within 30 days, we would have to attempt the journey ourselves. 200 miles east, through infected territory, with 7 civilians and 2 firearms. But that was a problem for day 30. Today's problem was food. Tomorrow's problem was Tomas getting home alive. The day after, we'd figure out how to make this mountain grow something we could eat. I was learning the hierarchy of crisis. Every day presented its own impossibility, and every impossibility had a seam you could work open if you refused to look at the full picture. The full picture would kill you. The seam, the next 6 hours, the next task, the next meal, that was survivable. I went inside and made myself eat 300 calories I didn't want. Day 10, 20 to go. Tomas returned on day 11, exhausted, dehydrated, but uninjured. He'd taken the high route above the tree line and moved fast, reaching the station at dusk with his water filter empty and his boots wearing through at the soles. I met him at the North Ridge approach, the only direction still clear of infected, and felt something unlock in my chest that I hadn't realized was clenched. "Missed anything?" he asked, forcing a grin. "Just 60 zombies using our east wall as a body pillow. Sounds cozy." We ate together, the whole group, around the common room table, sharing a pot of reconstituted stew that tasted like salt and survival. For 20 minutes it felt almost normal. Tomas told the boys about the view from Granite Peak, the eagles he'd seen hunting, the way the morning light hit the snowfields. He didn't tell them about the 4 infected on the trail or the distant sound of gunfire he'd heard from somewhere in the valley below Granite. He told me later, privately. "Gunfire means survivors," I said. "Gunfire means survivors with ammunition. Might mean friends. Might mean people who'd kill us for our food." He was right. The calculus of human threat hadn't disappeared because the dead walked. If anything, it had intensified. People with nothing would do anything. People with guns and nothing were exponentially more dangerous than any number of shuffling corpses. Day 12 brought a new problem. Connor, on morning watch, called me to the east deck with controlled urgency. "Something different," he said, pointing. Among the mass pressed against our east wall, one figure moved laterally. Not pushing forward, not static, actively moving along the wall, hands trailing across the surface as if searching. It reached the corner where the wall met the south cliff face, paused and turned back. Moved the other length, reached the north corner, paused. Then it looked up. I'd seen dozens of them by now. None had looked up. They pushed forward. They walked into obstacles. They fell into trenches. Their attention was ground level, immediate, fixed forward. This one tilted its head back and appeared to register the deck railing above. Appeared to register me. "Get back," I hissed, pulling Connor away from the railing. We watched from inside through a window. The figure remained at the building's base, head tilted upward, for 11 minutes. Then it resumed pressing forward with the others as if nothing had happened. "Was that different?" Connor asked. "Yes." "Are they getting smarter?" I didn't answer because I didn't want to say the word yes twice in a row, but the cold in my stomach said it for me. That afternoon I implemented new rules. No unnecessary time on the decks, no lights visible from outside after dark, no sound above conversational volume. We would not feed whatever awareness was growing in them, no visual stimulus, no audio stimulus, nothing to reward attention directed at us. Elena found me in the communications room that evening, redrawing our perimeter map with the new information. "You're scared of the one that looked up," she said. "Aren't you?" "Yes. But I'm a vet, Marin. I've watched animals learn. Rats, crows, dogs. Learning isn't instant, it's iterative. One individual discovers something, but it doesn't spread unless there's a mechanism for transmission." "You think they can't teach each other?" "I think if they could, they'd already be climbing the walls. One looking up doesn't mean they all will tomorrow. It means we have time to prepare before more of them figure it out." "How much time?" She shrugged. "In animal behavior, could be days, could be weeks, depends on the system." I added a note to my map in red marker. Escalation watch, behavioral changes. Below it I wrote the date and the observation, day 12. One subject looked up. I didn't know it then, but that single notation would define everything that followed. Days 13 through 16 blurred into a rhythm that felt almost sustainable. We established routines, watch rotations, work details, meal schedules, maintenance tasks. The body craves pattern, and even under siege we found one. Elena and Diane processed the remaining supply caches Tomas and I retrieved from a second backcountry point. Paul taught the boys to set snares on the North Ridge where rabbit trails crossed the alpine meadow. Darren, arm healing but weak, managed communications, cycling through radio frequencies 4 times daily searching for anything beyond the automated military loop. I ran our defense like a wildlife monitoring operation because that was the framework my brain offered. Observation logs, behavioral tracking, population counts, trend analysis. Each morning I recorded the number of infected at each face, noted movement patterns, flagged anomalies. Day 13, East Wall 73, North Trench 14, immobilized. Behavioral anomalies, 0. Day 14, East Wall 81, North Trench 17, behavioral anomalies 0. Day 15, East Wall 79, North Trench 19, behavioral anomalies 1. A second subject observed looking upward at northeast corner. Day 15's anomaly spiked my pulse. But Elena's framework held one more didn't mean all. We added it to the log and continued our preparations. On day 16, Tomas and I made a decision that would later seem either brilliant or catastrophic. We built a platform. The concept was simple. A raised walkway along the east deck, extending outward on brackets over the infected mass below, from which we could observe and, if necessary, engage. The infected couldn't climb 3 stairs. They certainly couldn't scale a vertical wall to reach a platform 15 feet above ground level. The platform gave us observation and tactical advantage without exposure. We built it from maintenance shed lumber, bolted to the existing deck railing supports, crude but sturdy. From it I could look directly down at the crowd pressed against our wall and study them with a proximity that was both nauseating and invaluable. Up close they were clearly dead in every way that mattered. Skin mottled gray-green, eyes clouded to opacity, mouths hanging open revealing teeth that had cracked from constant gnashing. They smelled like meat left in the sun, a sweetness that coated the inside of my nose and lived there for hours. Their clothing was what they died in: work uniforms, pajamas, athletic wear, one suit and tie. The democracy of collapse, every social marker erased by the same transformation. But from the platform on day 16, I observed something new. 2 of them, pressed close together near the foundation, were moving in synchronization. Not identically but rhythmically related. When one pushed forward, the other pushed a half beat later, then the first again. A pulse, almost like breathing. I called Eliana to the platform. She watched for 10 minutes, face unreadable. Then, entrainment. What? Biological synchronization. Fireflies flash together. Women's menstrual cycles align in close quarters. Cricket chirps synchronize. It's not intelligence, it's a physical phenomenon. Adjacent oscillating systems naturally fall into rhythm. So it's not coordination? Not yet. But entrainment is a precursor to collective behavior in many species. If enough of them synchronize... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I spent the rest of day 16 watching the crowd below with new eyes, counting synchronized pairs. I found 7 pairs pulsing together out of 81 individuals, less than 20%. But on day 13 there had been 0. That night I dreamed of fireflies. Thousands of them blinking in unison, then going dark, then blinking again, each pulse a step closer to my window, my door, my skin. I woke at 3 a.m. drenched in sweat and went to the east window. Below, in the moonlight, the mass pressed against our wall in silence. No sound from them there never was. They didn't moan or growl or shriek like movie monsters. They just pushed, together, getting better at it. Day 18 changed the mathematics entirely. It began with Connor's shout from the north deck at dawn. "Vehicles, the road!" I ran so fast, I cracked my shin on the common room table. From the north vantage, I could see the switchback road far below, past the broken gate, past the accumulated infected, still climbing, and there, at the road's lower junction where it met the valley highway, 2 vehicles. Moving. A truck and an SUV driving fast, weaving through abandoned cars on the valley road. As I watched, they turned onto our switchback, coming up. "Survivors," Darren said, arriving beside me. "Survivors heading straight toward the infected on our road." The vehicles climbed the first mile of switchback at high speed, honking horns whether to clear obstacles or signal us, I couldn't tell. The sound carried in the mountain air, and below me I watched the infected on the upper road react. Their heads turned toward the sound. Several peeled away from our wall and began moving downhill. "They're drawing them off," Tomas said, "or driving right into them." The truck reached the cluster of infected around the broken gate first. It didn't slow down. Bodies bounced off the brush guard and rolled into the roadside ditch. The SUV followed close behind, taking the same line. They punched through the crowd at the gate and accelerated up the final steep approach. I was at the main entrance by the time they reached our perimeter. The truck, a battered Dodge Ram with Wyoming plates, skidded to a stop 20 feet from our east wall. The SUV, a Toyota 4Runner, equally beaten, pulled alongside. Doors opened and people spilled out, 6 of them, 2 men, 2 women, 2 children. One of the men, tall, bearded, maybe 40, saw me on the deck and raised both hands. "Hey, we saw your radio broadcast. Harker Peak, that's you?" "That's us. Who are you?" "My name's Dominic Voss. We've been driving from Missoula. Please, we have children." The children. A girl maybe 8, a boy maybe 5, clinging to one of the women, dirty faces, hollow eyes. This wasn't the dilemma I'd prepared for. I'd imagined strangers as threats, armed groups demanding entry, desperate individuals who might be infected. But children. Children changed the equation in ways my rational mind couldn't override. "Are any of you bitten, scratched, injured?" "No, none of us. We've been sealed in vehicles for 3 days." I looked at Darren. He nodded slowly. Looked at Thomas. He said nothing, but his jaw was tight. "Come to the main entrance, east side. There are steps, climb them." I pulled the ramp extension down, and they scrambled up Dominic first, lifting the children, then the others. I watched each one as they entered. No wounds visible, no gray skin, no clouded eyes, just terror and exhaustion, and the desperate gratitude of people who'd found walls in a world without them. We went from 9 to 15 in 90 seconds. Our food math, already strained to shattered. 11 days of rations for 9 was now 7 days for 15. Maybe less, because 2 were children who needed calories for reasons beyond survival. Dominic's group had brought some supplies, 3 days of grocery store food in coolers, 10 gallons of gasoline, a hunting rifle with 40 rounds, and a shotgun with 12 shells. The ammunition changed our defensive calculus. The gasoline changed our evacuation calculus. But the mouths changed everything else. That night, with the newcomers settled in the common room and the children asleep on folded blankets, I sat with my map and my numbers and confronted the reality. 15 people, 7 days of food, no resupply within safe distance, and a growing horde below that was learning to synchronize. The mountain wasn't going to feed 15 people indefinitely. Something had to change, and I was the one who had to change it. Dominic told us about Missoula on day 19 while his people slept. We sat in the communications room, me, Thomas, Darren, and Dominic speaking quietly by lamplight. "It happened in hours," he said. "Not days. Hours. The university campus went first, dense population, close quarters. By noon on the 14th, you couldn't drive east on Broadway. By sunset, the National Guard had set up a perimeter around the airport and they were turning people away. Shooting people who rushed the barricades." "The Guard is still there?" "Was when we left on the 16th. But they were losing ground. Too many infected, not enough bullets." He rubbed his face. "The woman with me? Sarah, she's my sister. The other woman is her partner Jess. The kids are theirs. The other man is Carlos, Jess's brother. We were all at a family dinner when it hit." "How'd you hear our broadcast?" "Carlos had a ham radio in his garage. We'd been monitoring for 2 days, hiding in a basement. Your broadcast was the first specific location we heard. Coordinates, survivor count, defensible position. We just drove. 200 miles in 3 days? The highways are death. We took forest roads, fire access routes, lost a window, 2 tires, and a side mirror, but we made it." His information confirmed what the automated military broadcast suggested. Organized response existed but was collapsing under volume. The infection spread faster than containment could hold. Every city was a multiplication engine. But his arrival also confirmed something else. Our broadcast worked. If Dominic heard it, others had too, others who might come, expecting refuge we couldn't provide. "Tomas," I said after Dominic had gone to rest, We need to update the broadcast. Say what? Add a capacity warning. Tell them we're at maximum occupancy. Tell them we can't sustain more arrivals without resupply. Tomas looked at me for a long moment. You want to tell people not to come. I want to tell them the truth. 15 people, limited food, active siege. Anyone coming here needs to bring provisions or they're killing us all. And if they come anyway? Then we deal with it then. He nodded. I'll hike to Granite tomorrow. Update the broadcast. But Darren spoke from his corner. You won't need to. Dominic brought gasoline. Enough to run our generator for days. Power the station radio. Boost our signal from here. He was right. Within an hour, Tomas had the station's roof antenna reconnected and our generator humming. The broadcast went out on multiple frequencies. Harker Peak Ranger Station. 15 survivors. Defensible position. Critical food shortage. Arriving parties must carry minimum 72 hours provisions per person. No capacity for additional dependents. It was the most clinical language I could manage for what amounted to, please don't come here to die with us. Day 19 brought one more development. Elena, who'd been quietly studying the infected from our observation platform each day, pulled me aside at evening meal. The synchronization is spreading. How much? 40% of the East Wall group is entrained now, and I'm seeing something new. Cascading reaction. When one cluster pushes, adjacent clusters respond within seconds. It's rippling. What does that mean practically? It means their combined force against the wall isn't random anymore. It's becoming coordinated, not consciously, physically, like a wave. Can our wall take a wave? She hesitated. The concrete foundation can take almost anything they generate, but the upper structure, the wood framing, the windows that's rated for wind, not sustained lateral force from a coordinated mass. I looked at the east wall of our common room. Standard construction, timber frame, insulated, exterior siding. The foundation was concrete to 4 feet. Above that, wood. How long? If synchronization reaches saturation, all of them pushing in coordinated pulses, I'd estimate structural failure of the upper east wall within 72 hours of onset. I absorbed this with the specific calm of someone who has received too much bad news to metabolize any single piece of it. Day 19. 11 days left in my 30-day window. The mountain was still ours, but the walls were negotiable. I called a full meeting on day 20, all 15 including the children, because this decision affected everyone, and hiding it would erode trust faster than the infected were eroding our wall. Our east wall is under increasing stress, I said, standing before the group in the common room. Elena has identified a behavioral pattern in the infected that suggests coordinated force will develop over the next week to 10 days. When it does, the upper structure of this wall may fail. Silence. The 8-year-old girl, Mila, pressed closer to Sarah. The 5-year-old Adrian was asleep in Jess's arms. What are our options? Dominic asked. 3 that I see. First, we reinforce the east wall from inside. Timber bracing. It buys time but doesn't solve the problem. Second, we reduce the threat. Use our ammunition to thin the crowd at the east wall. 40 rounds of rifle, 12 shells, 2 pistol magazines. Might kill 50 if every shot counts. We have roughly 90 at the east wall now. And third? Paul asked. Third, we relocate our living space and critical supplies to the 2nd floor and sacrifice the ground level. They breach the east wall, flood the lower floor, and find nothing. We survive above them. Like living on top of a zombie aquarium, Connor said. Nobody laughed. Can the 2nd floor hold 15 people? Diane asked. Barely. The bunk room is up there and the communications room. We'd lose the kitchen and common area, but we'd live. I laid out the logistics. Moving food stores, water containers, medical supplies, and bedding upstairs required physical effort, but no materials we didn't have. The staircase between floors was narrow, a single body width with a turn halfway up. If we blocked the base of the stairs, anything breaching the lower level would pile up without reaching us. I vote third option, Elena said immediately. Conservation of resources. We don't waste ammunition on an unsolvable numerical problem. Agreed, Darren said. Dominic nodded. When do we start? Now. The next 2 days were a blur of carrying. Every can of food, every water jug, every blanket and tool and medical supply went up the narrow staircase. We stripped the ground floor of everything useful and barricaded the stairway with the steel filing cabinets, creating a choke point nothing could push through. On day 22, I made the additional decision to pull the ramp at our main entrance permanently. We would access the outside only through the second-floor deck, using a rope ladder we could retract. It meant sacrificing ground-level mobility, no more easy exits, no quick resupply runs. But it meant anything breaching below couldn't reach us above. We were giving ground to keep breath. During the move, Carlos, Dominic's brother-in-law, a quiet man who'd barely spoken since arrival, revealed himself as unexpectedly valuable. He was an electrician by trade, and within hours of understanding our generator system, he'd rewired our power distribution to serve only the second floor, reducing fuel consumption by 60%. Smart, Tomas told him. It's just circuits, Carlos said. Circuits I understand. The rest of this... He gestured vaguely at the world beyond our walls. That I don't. By day 22's end, we were a second-floor civilization. Cramped, airless, smelling of too many unwashed bodies in too small a space, but alive, defensible, elevated. From the east deck, I looked down at the mass below. Elena's count stood at 107. The synchronized pulsing was visible to the naked eye, now a wave that rolled through the crowd every 8 seconds, pushing against our foundation with collective rhythm. The wall would hold against that for a while. Concrete doesn't negotiate with meat, no matter how coordinated. But if they ever figured out the stairs, the windows, the deck supports... I added another red note to my increasingly bloody map. Day 22, full vertical relocation. East wall conceded. Clock unknown. 22 days defended, 8 remaining. I needed those 8 days to mean something. Day 23 brought rain, and with it a gift I hadn't anticipated. The heavy mountain downpour that lasted 11 hours did nothing to the infected. They stood in it without reaction, water streaming over their ruined faces, but it refilled our cistern completely and created temporary streams across the alpine meadow that our snares used. 3 rabbits by morning, the first fresh meat in over 2 weeks. Diane cooked them in the bunk room on a camp stove, and the smell drew everyone in like a spell. We ate in near silence, savoring. The children received larger portions and no one argued. But day 23 also brought the thing I'd dreaded since updating our broadcast. A voice on the radio. Harker Peak. This is a group of 12, approximately 40 miles east. We received your broadcast. We're en route. Requesting approach guidance. 12 more people, 40 miles out, coming whether I wanted them or not. I keyed the mic with a hand that didn't shake, though something inside me clenched. Copy, Group East. What supplies are you carrying? Enough for our group for 5 days. 2 vehicles. 1 hunting rifle, 1 pistol. We have a doctor. A doctor? The word pierced through my resource calculations like a needle through fabric, opening something. We had bandages and antiseptic. We did not have expertise. Darren's arm had healed through luck. If anyone else was seriously injured, a fall, an infection, a complication in the children, we would face medical crisis with nothing but Elena's veterinary knowledge. But 12 more mouths, on a floor that already felt like a submarine. Marin, Dominic was beside me. A doctor. With this many people, in these conditions, you need a doctor. I know what I need. I also know what we can sustain. They're bringing 5 days of food. That's not nothing. 5 days for 12. Divided among 27, that's barely 2 extra days for everyone. But a doctor, for 30 days, for whatever comes after. I stared at the radio. The decision wasn't about food math. It was about what kind of leader I was choosing to be, the kind who counted calories and closed doors, or the kind who counted capabilities and opened them. The contrast plan I'd made in my head during those early days, the image of myself as someone who made hard, rational choices, wavered against the reality of a doctor, of expertise that could save children's lives, of 12 more hands that could dig, build, fight. Group East, I keyed. Approach from the north. Valley Road to switch back to Broken Gate Road is impassable. Active infected presence. North Ridge Trail from Miller's Saddle is clear above treeline. You'll need to hike the final 3 miles on foot. Look for our station at the peak. Acknowledge. Acknowledged, Harker. North Ridge approach. We'll be there in 2 days, thank you. I set down the mic. You made the right call, Darren said from his bunk. There is no right call. There's only the call you can live with. I went to the deck and looked north along the ridge trail, the same path Tomas had taken to Granite Peak, the same path that remained our lifeline to the world below. Open terrain, clear sight lines, defensible. If the group followed instructions, they'd arrive safely. If they brought what they promised, we'd adapt. 27 people on a mountaintop. The fortress was becoming a settlement whether I intended it or not. The question wasn't whether to accept that transformation, but how to shape it. Command structures, resource allocation, labor distribution, medical protocols, all of it needed scaling. I was no longer defending a ranger station. I was building something without a name yet, in a world that had forgotten most of its vocabulary. Day 23, 7 days left. And for the first time, I was planning beyond 30. The Eastern group arrived on day 25, not 12, but 9. They'd lost 3 to an encounter on the Valley Road that no one wanted to describe in detail. Their leader was a woman named Dr. Priya Chandran, an emergency medicine physician from St. Patrick's Hospital in Missoula, who'd organized the group from hospital survivors when the building's perimeter collapsed on day 3. She climbed our rope ladder with medical professional calm, surveyed our second-floor civilization with dark, intelligent eyes, and said, "Show me your injuries." Within an hour, she'd assessed everyone. Darren's arm was healing clean. Connor had a concerning mole she wanted to monitor. One of her own people, a man named Gil, had a deep laceration on his calf, wrapped in duct tape and paper towels that she'd been unable to properly treat in transit. "I need clean water, light, and your medical kit," she told me, "and privacy." "Elena can assist. She's a vet tech." Priya paused, then a ghost of a smile. "Closest thing to a surgical nurse I'm likely to find. Send her in." The 9 new arrivals brought what they'd promised: concentrated food supplies, 2 functioning weapons, and crucially, a portable solar panel array scavenged from a survivalist's home outside Missoula. Carlos had it integrated with our power system by sunset, reducing generator dependence to nighttime hours only. 24 people now. Our second floor groaned with human weight and warmth. Sleep happened in shifts because there wasn't room for everyone to lie down simultaneously. The smell was ripe, unwashed bodies, camp stove cooking, the chemical tang of our improvised toilet system. But we were alive, we were organized, we had a doctor, and we were running out of time for a different reason. On day 26, Elena called me to the observation platform with urgency in her voice I'd never heard before. "Look at the North Trench." I looked. The trench was full. Not full of individual fallen infected. Full in the sense that bodies had accumulated to the point where the trench was no longer an obstacle. 26 impaled, tangled, crushed figures formed a bridge of flesh that new arrivals were walking across. 3 infected stood on our side of the trench, on our perimeter. When? Within the last hour, I counted 2 crossing during my watch. The 3 figures milled against the north wall of the station, the same mindless pressing behavior as the east crowd. But the north wall was our weak face. No concrete foundation on that side, just timber frame meeting the ground. And above it, our second-floor bunk room windows. "Tomas, Paul, Dominic." I didn't shout, didn't need to. Voices carried in our compressed world. They appeared in seconds. "The North Trench is compromised. We have infected on the north side. I need a new barrier immediately." We built it in 3 hours of frantic work, lowering materials from the north deck on ropes. A second barrier of stacked logs and heavy rocks directly against the north wall's base, creating a 4-foot berm that anything approaching would have to climb. Not a trench we didn't have time to dig, but a physical obstacle between their bodies and our timber. As we worked, more crossed the filled trench. 7 by the time we finished. They pressed against our berm and achieved nothing. But they'd been achieving nothing against the east wall for 26 days, and Elena told me the wall was developing stress fractures. That evening I counted our total besiegers. East wall, 131. North side, 7 and growing. South and west, still clear, still protected by gravity. 24 people, 2 defended faces, approximately 140 hostiles, and behavioral adaptation accelerating on a curve I couldn't predict. Day 26, 4 days remaining. The fortress was shrinking around us like a closing fist, and I was running out of concessions to make. Day 27 began with Elena shaking me awake at 4 a.m. "You need to see this." I followed her to the east deck in the pre-dawn dark, bare feet on cold wood. She pointed down. The crowd below had stopped pushing, all of them. 130-plus bodies stood motionless against our wall, faces upturned. In the faint starlight, I could see their clouded eyes directed uniformly at our deck at us. "How long?" I whispered. "I noticed 12 minutes ago, they all stopped at once." At once? Within seconds of each other. A cascading stop, like a signal passed through them. My skin went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the mountain air. They were looking at us, not pressing, not pushing, not searching blindly. Looking, as a single mass, oriented toward the living things above them. "What does this mean, Elena?" Her voice was steady, but I could hear the effort it cost. "It means entrainment reached saturation. They're synchronized, and their collective attention has shifted from the wall to the target behind it. Can they act on it? I don't know, but they're not going to unlearn this." I stood there for what felt like hours but was probably 3 minutes, watching 130 dead faces watching me. Then one of them moved. Not forward sideways. Along the wall toward the northeast corner where our deck supports met the ground. 2 more followed. They were looking for a way up. "Everyone awake," I said. "Now." Within 10 minutes, all 24 of us were assembled in the bunk room. I didn't sugarcoat. They've changed behavior. They're no longer pushing randomly, they're orienting toward us and exploring the structure. I believe they're going to find the deck supports and attempt to climb. Priya spoke first. "What's our structural vulnerability if they reach the second-floor deck? The deck is timber. It could sustain their weight, it's built for snow load. But the railing isn't designed for lateral pressure from bodies. If enough of them get onto the deck, they push through the railing into our interior." "How do we prevent them reaching the deck?" Dominic asked. Tomas answered, "The supports. 4x4 posts, 12 feet tall. If they figure out how to climb posts or pile onto each other like ants, they're on the deck." "Can we remove the supports and still keep the deck?" "No, the deck carries our access to the outside. Without it, we're sealed inside with no exit." I made the decision in the time it took to exhale. "We use the ammunition, right now, while they're clustered and stationary. We thin the east crowd before they figure out the supports. Every body we drop is one less that can pile or climb." "We have 52 rounds between the 3 long guns," Paul said. He'd been maintaining ammunition count since day 18. 52 rounds, 130 targets, we can't kill them all. We focus on the ones nearest the deck supports. Create a clear zone, buy time. At dawn, we positioned 3 shooters on the east deck: Dominic, Paul, and Gil, whose leg Priya had stitched cleanly enough for him to stand. "Tomas spotted," I commanded. The shooting lasted 4 minutes. In that time, we dropped 38 infected, 38 rounds, 38 kills, headshots from 15 feet elevation on stationary targets. The ease of it was nauseating, like killing furniture. The remaining 93 didn't flee, didn't scatter. They turned toward the sound and pressed forward over the fallen with renewed intensity. But the clear zone around our deck supports held, for now. 14 rounds remaining across all weapons. I'd bought time. How much I couldn't know. But the image of those upturned faces, unified, attentive, evolving, was burned into a part of my brain I'd never access without flinching. Day 27. They were learning. We were spending. The race was no longer about walls and food. It was about whether human ingenuity could outpace whatever dark adaptation was driving them toward us. Day 28 delivered the radio signal I'd stopped believing would come. Harker Peak Station, this is Falcon 6, United States Army Aviation. We have your coordinates from emergency broadcast. Please confirm survivor count and landing zone availability. Over. I was in the communications room, and the sound of a professional military voice nearly dropped me. My hand was shaking so badly I almost couldn't key the mic. Falcon 6, this is Harker Peak. 24 survivors confirmed. 2 children. Landing zone affirmative. We have a clearing north of the station, approximately 40 meters by 30 meters. Alpine Meadow, over. Copy, Harker. We are tasked for extraction. Window is narrow. Fuel constraints limit our presence to 15 minutes on station. Can you have all survivors at the LZ on signal? Affirmative. When? Weather dependent. Earliest window is day after tomorrow. We will broadcast 30-minute warning on this frequency. All survivors must be at LZ at broadcast plus 30, no second pass. Confirm understanding. Understood. Broadcast plus 30. All survivors at North Meadow LZ confirmed. Falcon 6 out. I set the mic down and put my forehead against the cold metal of the radio console. Didn't move for a long time. When I lifted my head, Darren was in the doorway. I heard, he said. Day after tomorrow. Day 30. Day 30! I almost laughed. They're coming on day 30. Can we hold 2 more days? I thought about the 93 remaining at our east wall, learning to look up. The growing north side crowd crossing our bridged trench. The 14 rounds we had left. The 24 people depending on every decision I made. We have to. The next 30 hours were the longest of my life. I organized everything around a single objective. Get 24 people from the second floor of this station to the North Meadow, a distance of approximately 200 yards across open ground in under 30 minutes, with hostile elements on at least 2 sides. The North Meadow was above and behind the station, accessed by the Ridge Trail. The Ridge Trail ran past our north face and now compromised, with the trench bridged and 14 infected on our side. Between us and the landing zone, those 14, and whatever additional numbers crossed the trench in the next 2 days. We create a corridor, I told the group at our final planning meeting. The North Meadow has one approach from our position. The Ridge Trail. We clear that trail of infected and hold it open long enough for everyone to pass through. With 14 rounds? With 14 rounds, 2 fire axes, and every person here who can swing a tool. Tomas, Dominic, Paul, Carlos, and Gil would form the clearing team. Armed with the remaining firearms and the axes, they'd move ahead of the main group and eliminate any infected on the trail between the station and the meadow. The rest of us, Darren, Elena, Priya, the women, the boys, the children, would move as a tight group immediately behind them. Speed is everything, I said. We won't have time to fight extended contact. We move fast, we stay together, we don't stop for anything except a child falling, understood? Everyone nodded. Even Mila, the 8-year-old, nodded with eyes too old for her face. That night, the last night on the mountain, I couldn't sleep. Not from fear, though fear was there. From something else. An unwillingness to stop being this. This person who decided. This person who watched. This version of Marin Caldwell that didn't exist 30 days ago and wouldn't be needed once a helicopter took us off this peak. I didn't know who I'd be when this was over. That uncertainty was its own kind of loss. I sat on the north deck until dawn, watching the ridge trail in moonlight, counting the dark shapes that moved at its edges. Day 29 ended. Day 30 began, last day. The broadcast came at 0847. Harker Peak, Falcon 6, 30-minute window active, acknowledge. Acknowledged, moving to LZ now. I turned to the room, 23 faces looked at me. Mila held Adrian's hand. Sarah had their go bag on her back. Everyone carried something, the lightest loads on the weakest shoulders, the heaviest on the strongest. Clearing team goes first. Main group on my signal. We move in 60 seconds. Tomas checked his rifle. Dominic racked the shotgun. Paul held a fire axe in hands that hadn't shaken in weeks. Carlos and Gil flanked them with the second axe and a sharpened pry bar. "Go," I said. They dropped the rope ladder from the north deck, our only exit, and descended in quick succession. I watched from above as they hit the ground and moved toward the ridge trail, 20 yards to the trail entrance. Between them and it, 6 infected who'd crossed the bridged trench overnight. The first 2 shots cracked in the morning air. 2 dropped. Tomas cycled the bolt. 3rd shot, 3rd drop. Dominic closed distance on the remaining 3 and the shotgun spoke twice, both loads finding targets at close range. Paul reached the 6th with his axe before it could close the gap. Clear to the trail. Main group, go! I guided them down the ladder. Priya first. Then Sarah, with Adrian on her hip. Then Jess with Mila. Then Diane, then the boys, then Elena, then Darren, one-armed, grimacing but moving. Dominic's people followed. I went last, pulling the ladder down behind me out of pure instinct. Deny them the tool, deny them the route, deny them everything. On the ground, the world was louder. The East Wall crowd had reacted to the gunshots. I could hear them surging around the building's corner, that synchronized pulse, now audible as a rhythmic thudding. They'd be on us in minutes. "Move!" I shouted, and we ran. The ridge trail was 200 yards of open alpine terrain, rising gently toward the meadow. The clearing team held position at the trail's midpoint, where 2 more infected had emerged from the downslope. Tomas dropped one with his 4th to last round. Gil clubbed the other to the ground with the pry bar, and Paul finished it. Behind us, the first of the East Wall crowd rounded the station's north corner. I didn't look back. I couldn't afford the information my eyes would provide because it would slow my legs. "Keep moving, don't stop." The meadow opened before us, flat, green, impossibly beautiful in the morning light. And above it, growing from a speck to a shape to a sound, a Black Hawk helicopter descending on its approach vector. The noise was enormous. Wind from the rotors flattened the grass in expanding circles. The children screamed not in fear but in overwhelm, the sheer volume of salvation drowning every other sense. "Get in! Everyone in!" A crew chief in a flight helmet was at the open door, hauling people aboard with mechanical efficiency. Sarah and the children first, then Jess, Diane, Elena, Dominic's people, Darren, boosted by Tomas. Paul and the boys. I was counting. 23 in. I turned. Behind me, 50 yards back, the first wave of infected crested the trail's rise and moved toward the meadow. Behind them, more. Dozens. The entire East Wallen crowd, mobile, oriented, approaching. "Ma'am, now!" I ran to the helicopter. Tomas grabbed my arm and pulled me aboard. The crew chief slammed the door. The engine screamed. The ground fell away. Through the window I watched the meadow fill with bodies. They walked to where we'd been and stopped, clustered in the center of the flat ground, faces tilted upward toward the sky. Watching us leave. I looked away from the window and found I was gripping Tomas's hand so hard my knuckles were white. He didn't pull away. Below us the mountain grew small. Harker Peak Ranger Station sat on its summit like a toy, surrounded by dark figures, overrun but intact. Standing, as I'd promised it would. 30 days, defended. They flew us to Malmstrom, a processing center and a hangar, cots, rations, medical evaluations, forms asking questions nobody knew how to answer. I filled them out with a pen that felt foreign in my hand, a hand more accustomed now to axes and rope than writing. On the 3rd night, Priya found me standing outside the hangar looking at mountains on the horizon. "You can't sleep either," she said. "I can't stop scanning the tree line." "That won't go away quickly." She was right. It hasn't. Months later I still check perimeters. Still count heads, still wake at sounds and calculate threat vectors before my conscious mind engages. I am not who I was. The woman who counted elk and carried bear spray exists in memory like a photograph of a stranger. The woman who replaced her, the one who dug trenches, rationed calories, ordered shots fired, chose who to save and what to sacrifice, She lives in my body now with a familiarity that frightens me. I defended that mountain for 30 days. But the mountain remade me in its image, watchful, hard, uncompromising. I don't know how to be soft terrain again. I'm not sure I want to be.